I'm typing this with shaking hands because I need someone, anyone, to understand how completely I destroyed my life in one moment of pure selfishness. 3 hours ago, I was married with 2 beautiful kids. Now I'm sitting in a hotel room alone, and my husband won't even look at me. It started with a text. Just one stupid text from my coworker Ryan that said thinking about you with a winking emoji. I should have deleted it. Instead, I felt this rush of excitement I hadn't felt in years. David and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5, and somewhere along the way we become roommates who happened to share kids. My friends kept telling me I was too young to settle, that I deserved passion, that other women our age were out there living their best lives while I was making school lunches and watching Netflix alone most nights. The affair lasted 3 months. 3 months of lies, deleted messages, and hotel rooms during lunch breaks. Ryan made me feel alive again, like I was desirable and interesting instead of just David's wife or Emma and Jake's mom. I told myself David wouldn't care that much, that we were practically strangers anyway. I convinced myself this was just something I needed to get out of my system. God, I was so stupid. The kids knew something was wrong. Emma, who's 7, kept asking why I was on my phone so much. Jake, only 4, started having nightmares and wanting to sleep in our bed every night. I was irritated by their needs because they interrupted my fantasy world. I actually got annoyed at my own children for wanting their mother's attention. What kind of monster does that make me? David tried too. He planned date nights I'd cancel last minute, brought me flowers I barely acknowledged, asked if everything was okay when I was clearly somewhere else mentally. He was trying to save our marriage while I was actively destroying it, and I let him think it was his fault for not being enough. The worst part is how easy the lying became. Working late again. Girls' night with Sarah. Traffic was horrible. Each lie came smoother than the last, and I started to believe I was smart enough to never get caught. I thought I was some criminal mastermind when really I was just a selfish woman who couldn't see past her own wants. Last Tuesday, Ryan started pulling back. Shorter texts, cancelled meetings, that look in his eyes like he was already moving on. I should have been relieved, but instead I panicked. I couldn't lose him too. So I did something even more unforgivable. I told him I was thinking about leaving David. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them, and suddenly this fantasy became a plan I never actually wanted. That's when I knew I was in too deep, but I couldn't figure out how to climb out. This morning, David was making pancakes for the kids like he does every Sunday. Emma was telling him about her school project, and Jake was trying to flip his pancake by himself. It was this perfect domestic moment, and I felt nothing but guilt and panic. I kept checking my phone waiting for Ryan to text back, even though he'd been ignoring me for 2 days. Then David's phone buzzed with a text. Mine was dead, so I asked to use his to call my sister. Such a small, normal request. He handed it over without hesitation because why wouldn't he trust his wife? The notification was right there on the lock screen. A message from his buddy Mike with a photo attached and the text, "Dude, isn't this your wife?" My heart stopped. The photo was me and Ryan kissing outside the hotel last week. Someone had seen us. Someone David knew. The photo was grainy but unmistakably us. I stared at that screen for what felt like hours but was probably seconds. In the background, I could hear David asking the kids what they wanted to do later, completely unaware that his entire world was about to implode. Emma was laughing at something Jake said. The pancakes were burning. David looked over and saw my face first, then followed my eyes to his phone. He took it from my hands without saying a word and stared at the message. The silence stretched forever. Emma and Jake kept chattering, but David and I were frozen in this bubble of complete devastation. "Kids, go upstairs and get dressed," he said quietly, his voice completely steady. They sensed something was wrong and obeyed immediately, which they never do. Once we heard their bedroom doors close, David finally looked at me. I expected screaming, accusations, demands for explanations. Instead, he just said, "How long?" "David, I can explain." "How long?" 3 months. He nodded like he was filing away information. "Do you love him?" I opened my mouth to lie again, but something in his face stopped me. "I don't know." Another nod. "Are you planning to leave us for him?" The question hit me like ice water because I realized I'd been so caught up in the thrill that I'd never actually thought it through. Leave my kids? Leave this house, this life we built? Ryan had never even mentioned a future together. He just wanted the excitement of an affair, same as me. "No," I whispered. "But you told him you were." My blood froze. "How do you?" "Mike saw you two arguing in the parking lot yesterday. He heard you say it. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to rewind time and delete that text, erase those 3 months, go back to being bored but safe. Instead, I had to stand there while my husband processed that his wife was not only cheating but planning to abandon their family for it. David sat down heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were completely empty. "Pack a bag," he said. "I'll tell the kids you're visiting your sister for a while." "David, please, can we talk about this? I made a mistake, but I don't want to lose." "You already lost it." His voice was so calm it was terrifying. "The second you chose him over us, you lost it. I'm not going to fight for someone who doesn't want to be here." I tried to argue, to beg, to explain how confused I was, but he just walked upstairs. I heard him talking quietly to the kids, heard Emma ask if I was okay, heard him say Mommy needed some space to think about things. When I came upstairs with my hastily packed bag, Jake ran to hug my legs. "When are you coming home, Mommy?" I couldn't answer. I just kissed his head and told him to be good for Daddy. Emma hung back by David's side, watching me like she was trying to figure out what she'd done wrong. David walked me to the door. "I'll have a lawyer call you tomorrow," he said. "Don't contact us unless it's an emergency." "What about the kids? When can I see them?" "When you figure out who you want to be." The door closed behind me with the quietest click, and I knew I just heard the sound of my entire life ending. That was 6 months ago. I'm writing this from my childhood bedroom in my parents' house because I have nowhere else to go. The woman who thought she deserved better than her boring suburban life is now 32 years old, sleeping in a twin bed under posters she hung in high school. The lawyer call came exactly when David promised. No fault divorce, but he was asking for primary custody with supervised visitation for me until I completed therapy and proved I was stable. I wanted to fight it, but my own lawyer took one look at the evidence and told me to be grateful David wasn't pushing for full custody. Ryan ghosted me completely. The day David kicked me out, I called Ryan crying, expecting him to comfort me or maybe even suggest we could finally be together properly. Instead, he told me he thought I understood this was just physical, that he never meant for me to blow up my life over him. He'd already started seeing someone else. Someone single. I sat in that hotel room realizing I destroyed my marriage for a man who saw me as a convenient lunch break. The passion I thought we had was just the thrill of doing something forbidden. Without the secrecy and the risk, we were nothing. My parents took me in, but they barely speak to me. My mom keeps asking what I was thinking, and my dad just looks disappointed every time I walk into a room. They love David like a son, and they adore Emma and Jake. Now they have to choose between supporting their daughter and maintaining a relationship with their grandchildren. I've poisoned even that. The worst part is the kids. My supervised visits happen at a neutral location with a social worker present, like I'm some kind of danger to my own children. Emma barely talks to me anymore. When I ask about school or her friends, she gives one-word answers and stares at her hands. She used to tell me everything, and now she treats me like a stranger. Jake is more forgiving, but in a way that breaks my heart even more. He keeps asking when I'm coming home, when we can all be together again, if Daddy is mad at me because I was bad. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that Mommy chose to hurt Daddy on purpose? David won't speak to me directly. All communication goes through lawyers or the social worker. He's moved on in ways I never thought possible. When I drive past the house during my scheduled pickup times, I can see through the windows sometimes. He's learned to braid Emma's hair. He's teaching Jake to ride his bike. He's doing all the things we used to do together, but better somehow, like he's more present now that I'm gone. I heard through mutual friends that he started dating someone. A teacher at Emma's school who's apparently wonderful with kids and makes David laugh again. Emma likes her. That information hit me like a physical blow because it means they've all moved on without me. I'm not even a ghost in my former life. I've been completely replaced. My friends drop me one by one. Sarah, who used to tell me I deserved better, won't return my calls. The other moms from school avoid me at pickup when I'm allowed to come. I've become a cautionary tale they whisper about at coffee dates. Did you hear about Jessica? Can you imagine throwing away everything for some guy from work? I lost my job too. Not officially for the affair, but the office dynamic became too awkward. Everyone knew. I'd catch people whispering and stopping when I walked by. My productivity tanked because I was constantly anxious and depressed. When they offered me a severance package to leave quietly, I took it. Now I work at a retail job that pays half what I used to make. I ring up families buying school supplies and birthday presents, and I think about how I used to be the mom making those purchases for my own kids. I used to complain about how expensive everything was getting. Now I'd give anything to have those mundane worries back. The therapy David demanded is brutal. My therapist doesn't let me make excuses or blame anyone else. She forces me to confront how I justified every betrayal, how I prioritized my own wants over my children's needs, how I convinced myself David wouldn't be hurt by something that destroyed him. I've learned that I was depressed and feeling trapped, but millions of people feel that way without cheating. I've learned that I have a pattern of running away when things get difficult instead of doing the work to fix them. I've learned that I'm not the victim of my own story, no matter how much I want to be. The hardest session was when she asked me what I thought Emma and Jake learned from watching their mother disappear. That their love isn't enough to keep people around. That families aren't safe or permanent. That the person who's supposed to protect them above all else might just abandon them for someone more interesting. I think about that every night when I can't sleep. I think about Jake having nightmares and not understanding why mommy doesn't live with them anymore. I think about Emma growing up believing that love is conditional and people leave when they get bored. I think about David having to explain to them someday why their family fell apart, and how he'll probably be kinder about it than I deserve. The divorce was finalized last month. I got every other weekend with the kids and one evening per week, all supervised until further notice. David got the house, primary custody, and the right to move on with his life. I got exactly what I chose, freedom from the boring suburban existence I thought was beneath me. Except I wasn't free. I was just alone. Last week, Emma had a school play. I wasn't invited, but I drove by and saw David walking in with his girlfriend and Jake. They looked like a family. A happy one. Emma waved at them from the stage, and I realized she wasn't looking for me in the audience because she'd stopped expecting me to be there. I used to be irreplaceable in their lives. Now I'm barely a footnote. The woman I am now would give anything to go back to making school lunches and watching Netflix alone. I'd take a lifetime of suburban boredom over this hollow ache of knowing I traded everything real for a fantasy that lasted 3 months. But some choices don't get undone, no matter how sorry you are. I wanted passion and excitement and to feel desired again. Instead, I learned that the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's just different grass, and you can't see it properly until you've already burned down your own garden. The woman reading this who's thinking about that text from her coworker, or lunch with her ex, or the charming neighbor who pays her compliments her husband doesn't, stop. Whatever you think you're missing, whatever you think you deserve, it's not worth becoming the kind of person who has to write a story like this. Trust me. I used to be you, and now I'm the woman other women use as a cautionary tale when they talk about how good they have it. Some mistakes don't get second chances. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Some trust, once broken, stays broken forever. Don't become me. The door closed behind me with the quietest click, and I knew I just heard the sound of my entire life ending.